Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, Paisley Girl and Life Garden. We're always doing something around here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about preserving. I don't know if any of you are preserving or if you've started preserving in the recent events of what's going on in our world, but it's a good thing if you are. If you're not, it's not too late to start. That's why I have our herb garden growing, because I want to preserve our herbs as much as possible. Yes, you can buy them in the store, but if you can grow them, especially the ones that come back every year, you don't have to buy them. So that's what we're doing today. I've already got some herbs that are in the dehydrator that I started yesterday, but we're going to go through and I'm going to show you what I cut and how I store our herbs. You know that I am about self-preservation, self-reliance. Yes, I am unfortunately in an apartment setting. Hopefully that will change in the next year or so. But I make do with the best that I can. And I'm also going to show you something about where we talked and I showed you in a previous video of volunteer plants and things and what I'm doing with those. You can see we're out here in the apartment garden. If you look over there, you will see a almost ripened Roma tomato. Yeah, it was one of the first ones that popped really quick, and I was like, wow. So it's almost ready. That's exciting. Have a lot more blooms coming on, so hopefully that will produce more here soon. And then we have our celery growing. Our onions are bulbing, as you can see there. And I also planted more onions. And through here, those will be ready before, well, late fall. They can survive a pretty hardy frost, so that's not no worries there. I planted some carrots here. But yesterday I harvested our sage, our wild thyme, no, I'm sorry, our oregano, our wild thyme. And then if you remember this volunteer plant that grew in with the thyme, and I said I'm not going to cut it, I'm going to see what it turned out to be. Well, it did turn out to be calendula, and if you see, I clipped it here in a couple spaces actually, and then there's blooms, so those are cut and come agains, and so I clipped those. I'll show you what I'm doing with those later. And look at those beautiful little flowers, aren't they gorgeous? That was the planter that my husband had got me, and we filled it nicely. It's so pretty to look at. This section here was zinnias, and they died out, so I went ahead and pulled them to give the rest of the plants more room. Then over here is our basil, and I cut those down. They were, I'd say about that tall. So I went ahead and cut them down. I've got those in the dehydrator. And then our chives, we gave them a messy haircut, but it's a haircut. Those are also in the dehydrator. And then the same with our parsley all around. We trimmed those down. And those, like I said, those will keep coming back. So trim those down. Those are in the dehydrator as well. And then over here you see we have these calendulas popped up. And I'm deadheading these ones so I can keep the seeds for next year. But I also took some off of this plant, and you can see that the little buds are starting to come back again, because they're also cut and come again. So I got some of those in dehydrator. We'll talk about those. And then we have our marigolds. I've been saving the seeds from the dried up blossoms here. And then we come over here. You can see that our parsley has went to seed, which is fine. It'll come back next year as well. And we have our rosemary. And then, if you look over here, look at this tomato. Isn't that crazy looking? That is actually 3 tomatoes in one. They call that cat-faced. Most people discard them. I'm not going to. I figured if that's the way they're supposed to grow, then that's the way it'll grow. And we'll still eat it. And our cucumbers at the apartment garden are doing very well. These are pickling cucumbers, so they will not get large. We don't want them to get large, actually. So that's what we've been doing. I'm going to take you inside and I'm going to show you what I have dehydrated since yesterday and how I store my dehydrated items. Like I said, it's just self-preservation. You just never know. You know, when that big sea hit, you know, everything went crazy. There was things flying off the shelf. You couldn't find it. And then if you did find it, people were charging irate prices for them. So I thought, you know what, this is a good time to at least stock up on that stuff, because even if you have foods that you don't particularly want or would eat in a crisis, those herbs will make it taste better. So we're going to go in here, we're going to talk about what we're doing, and be back in just a moment. So here are some of my herbs that I have. As you can see, the jars still need filled up. We use them quite often, and as the garden continues to grow, we will just keep adding more and more. This is our mint that we have growing out there. We love that for tea. We love hot or cold tea, actually. You can also use it for ice cream. This is our dehydrated onions. But as you can see, I'm not using all the mason jars for these types of items, because we need to save our mason jars for the harvest of the foods from the garden as much as possible, since it's hard to find right now. I did see that a lot of places are bringing them back into the stores again in time for harvest, so I'll be able to get some more of those. But I just use, like, this is a pickle jar, washed it real good, put it in the dishwasher, dried it out, and kept the lid, and it keeps things airtight in there. The first thing that we have here is our chives that we gave a haircut yesterday. You can see they're pretty large. Some people will chop them down. I do have a coffee grinder that I can use to chop them down. I don't find that necessarily as necessary as needed, but I do have my jar here. So when I put them in the jar, I just kind of smash them down. And then when we do get them out to use, I can cut them. But they break pretty easy when they go in the jar. You can hear that crunch. Hopefully you can hear that. You know they're good and dry. That's the one thing you have to make sure, that they are dry and there's no moisture. You don't want any mold or anything like that growing into your herbs that you're preserving. So I got the chives in there. As you can see, take up a lot of room when they're not broken down. So what I tend to do is just take a wooden spoon and just kind of smash them down in there. And that will give you more room for later use. And like I said, you can grind these up in like a coffee grinder, or a cheap little grinder that you can purchase. But this seems to work okay for me, instead of breaking all the extra equipment out. And see, I'm pounding it, and This has got great onion flavor, so if you don't have onions, at least if you have chives, you can have some onion flavor to your dishes. And as you can see now, that's broken that down. Put that lid on there and keep it in a dark, cool, dry place, and you're good to go. Thing is the calendula flowers that I had volunteer grow from, and they're good and dry. And I just popped the heads, and even with the green on, and dried it, because that'll make it easier when I get the yellow from, and they can be different colors, but these ones are yellow, the yellow petals off. And I did not grab a jar because this is very little and it's just a start, so just starting it, I just got a plastic bag and marked it calendula. And what you can do with this is you can make teas. You can make calendula tea and look that up and see what the benefits of that is. You can also make calendula salves. I don't plan on making salves, but I do like to have it for the benefits of tea. So at this point, you're going to take these little blossoms you have, and you're just going to put it in your little Ziploc baggie or your jar, whichever you prefer. And if some of the green gets in there, it's okay. Try not to get all of it. But that's all you do. Just sprinkle it in there and save it up to make tea later on. You can also buy oxygen absorbers to keep things from being oxygenated, but I haven't had a problem with them. And these won't stay in there long enough to cause any problems with that. And what I'll do is when I go to make my hot tea or that I want to use these in, I'll put them in a, you can buy like an actual tea, I can't even remember what it's called, but, and put it in there in your water. But I just put it in cheesecloth and wrap it up and let it seep in the water. And then that'll give me my tea just as well. So I'll make sure I get all the air out of there as possible. And I'll just keep adding to that. And then once I get a little bit more, then I'll go ahead and get a jar and start putting it in there and mark it like I did my others. It's not the prettiest. I can take some Murphy oil or something and get that off of there, but I don't care what my jars look like. I care what's inside. And this next jar is our rosemary. And as you can see, I've dehydrated that. And at this point, you could put the whole stem in there. I prefer not to. I just like doing the leaves. So then I just take my finger, bring it back here, and just slide it through and pull the stem with it out. And then you have your rosemary inside. And there wasn't a lot on this one, but it was enough that since I was harvesting some other ones already, I went ahead and just threw them on there. But it's just very simple, just putting it between your fingers and pulling through, and it comes out clean. Now you could save the stems and use those too for broths and things. Oh, that one broke on me. There we go. Got the rest of it. But this is just good stuff to have. This is great for chicken, and there's all kinds of recipes to use rosemary. And there you have it. Next thing that we have here is our sage. Sage grows very prolifically, so I got a big jar for that. This is only like 2 harvests. This is probably the 3rd one, and I haven't even been over to the allotment garden yet. So I put let's put the jar where you can see it. Here you go. As you can see, the sage It's still in the stem, but it's dried out. And at this point, I just basically take the leaf off and put it in there. I don't put the whole stem in. I don't feel that it needs grinded. If we do need to grind it, then we can do that before we go to use it. But it comes off very easily. And a lot of people don't use sage a lot because it is such an intense flavor. But it's great for a lot of fall time recipes, especially, you know, Thanksgiving, your turkeys, your dressings. So we like to have it on hand. And sometimes we have a craving for a fall savory dish in a different season, just because we're craving it. And we can always break out the sage. Smells wonderful. Thing on our list is thyme. This one's a little trickier. The stems are a little more gently, I don't know, fragile. There's the word. And we don't need the stems, obviously. So I just start here at the bottom and just kind of push through, and then come up to the top and push through gently, and then your leaves will all come off and end up in the jar, so you're not making a mess and you're not losing your herbs that you've worked so hard to grow. So I'm going to continue doing the rest of these and get them in this jar. Another thing too about these mesh liners, like that sage, as you can see, a lot of it fell off of the stem. Well, at this point, then I can just pick this up and fold it and pour the rest in the jar so I'm not losing anything. Now I haven't lost any, and it's all in the jar. Thing on the list is parsley. This is one of our favorite herbs to grow and use. This jar has been filled up probably 3 times, and we just keep refilling it. So I went ahead and dried those as well. Isn't that beautiful? And it's the same concept. Put it in here, put it between 2 fingers, and don't break the stem like I just did. Just let it go in. There we go. And I try to keep it as whole as possible because I like how it's pretty once we put it in the recipes that we're using. So we'll continue doing this, and while you're here, why don't you go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell and like, so that you can see all of my videos. We do all kinds of self-preservation here. I make jams, I bake, I do fermenting and canning and all that good stuff. So go ahead and do that while we're thinking about it and while I'm finishing this up, and then we'll continue on. Now we're moving on to the oregano. We really enjoy our oregano around here, and you know that if you've watched my channel from before, I make spaghetti sauces, pizza sauces, regular tomato salsa, and things that I can use all these herbs in. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm just holding up the stem into the jar, using my 2 fingers again, and discarding the leaves in there. That looks like there might, yep, there was 2. So, the fragrance of this is wonderful. If we had smell-o-vision, I'm sure you would enjoy it. There are certain herbs that anybody that watches my channel like the most. I think mine is basil. Oregano is a close second, but basil, I believe, is my favorite herb to smell, whether it's fresh or dried. There we go. Got that in there. Oh, here's one I missed. Don't want to lose any of our herbs here. And then some have fell onto the mat. So I'll just fold that up again. Kind of funnel it into the jar. And our oregano is ready to go. Last thing that we have from the dehydrator today is our basil. Now I went ahead yesterday and took the basil off the actual stem because they're larger leaves. So I just thought it would be easier to just go ahead and take them off the stem now or before. I did leave a little stem on that one. So I'll just pop it off and put it in there whole. This is one of the easier ones to get in the jar because I can just fold this up and funnel it straight in there. Now you can also break them down into a powder, whatever you'd like. We tend to leave them whole and then we can break them down later. And we'll put the lid on. And from the gardens last year, you'll see in this one we saved hot pepper flakes. So those hopefully this will get filled up a lot more once those peppers start really going over there in the garden. Then we have our dill. Of course, our celery here. This is great to add in soups later for flavor and rehydrating. Then, of course, our mint again. There is some mint out there, so I'm probably going to go ahead and grab some and start dehydrating some more of that. We really enjoy our mint. So, we got all of our dehydrated herbs and our calendula petals put away in the pantry, and I wanted to tell you how I preserve those. I do have a dehydrator. My dehydrator, I set my herbs at 135 degrees. Usually I set it for 23 hours. Now, it does not take that long. I do that preferably because I like to make sure that they get good and dry and there's no moistures in there, and it doesn't damage it. All it does is keeps making sure that it's dry. Excuse me. Oh. Anyway, most herbs take 4 to 6 hours. Sometimes I will pull them out after that. I put them in late yesterday, so I said, well, I'll just get them out tomorrow morning. So you can do that. If you do not have a dehydrator, you have other options. You can put them in an oven. You can dry them at your lowest setting and just keep an eye on them. Make sure that they get good and dry that way. It does take a little longer. It can heat up your house. But the dehydrator can heat up your house too. So it doesn't make a difference to me too much. Another way, the old way, in case anything should ever happen, which I pray every day that it doesn't, if we wouldn't have electricity, you could tie the stems together of your herbs with anything that you could find at that point and hang dry them. And it takes a lot longer to do that, but you're still able to preserve that way. So always remember that if you don't have electricity, you can still dehydrate your herbs that you can grow in your garden. The most important thing is learning to grow those herbs in your garden. It doesn't take a lot of work for herbs. Most of them are pretty easy. They're mostly self-contained, and most of them will come back year after year. So that's the big thing. Get those herb gardens started, if nothing else. But it's really important that if you want to be more self-reliant, it's not too late to start. It's very important. With the way that the world is going today, I don't even know what we're looking forward to. I can only pray that it gets better. But unfortunately, sorry, we have someone driving by. Unfortunately, it's not looking great. So, yes, we got food in the stores. Hopefully, that stays that way. But if not, you need to learn to grow your food for yourself and your family, just in case. You never know what the future holds for us. So thank you again, and I appreciate your love and your support. If you have any questions, please comment below. And again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you can get future videos. Like I said, we do all kinds of things on this channel. I mostly do it for my family, that one day they can look back and say, hey, my mom did that. I know I can now. You know, and they can do things. It's very important to me that I can pass on a legacy to my kids that they can help or they can learn to preserve for their families and themselves as well. So, like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, we love you, we bless you until next time, and share, share, share.